Hi, everyone. My name's Eloisa Ramos, and I'm here with my friend Connie. Hi, Connie. And we are studying the text of A Course in Miracles. Today, we are going to continue with Chapter 6, The Lessons of Love. And we finished the message of the crucifixion last time. So we are on Section 2, the alternative to projection. Okay. Alternative to projection. Okay. Paragraph 1. Any split in mind must involve a rejection of part of it, and this is the belief in separation. The wholeness of God, which is His peace, cannot be appreciated except by a whole mind that recognizes the wholeness of God's creation. By this recognition, it knows its creator. Exclusion and separation are synonymous, as are separation and dissociation. We have said before that the separation was and is dissociation, and that once it occurs, projection becomes its main defense, or the device that keeps it going. The reason, however, may not be so obvious as you think. Okay. All right. So this is really good. This is telling us that the belief in separation is the idea that the mind can be split. And that idea means that we must be rejecting a part of our mind in order to split it. And therefore, you could think of that in terms of the belief that each individual is a private self with their own private mind that we often confuse with a brain. And therefore, it's a self or a mind that we see as not a part of us. And therefore it's something that we have projected as if there was an external and an internal. And of course, the wholeness of God, which is His peace. So the peace of God is the recognition here, because it's saying that the wholeness of God, which is His peace, cannot be appreciated except by a whole mind that recognizes the wholeness of God's projections. Okay, so if I perceive you as separate from me, a separate mind with your own ideas, your own beliefs, separate from myself, my own ideas, okay, I am splitting my mind. I'm not seeing our oneness, okay? And when I do that, I cannot appreciate inner peace. And that means that my mind needs healing because it's not at peace. Because I'm not recognizing the wholeness of God's creation, which is what we are. Okay. And because God created one creation, because remember that God is wholeness, so therefore creation has to be whole. It can't be individual little pieces and parts. That's the belief in separation, in separate little egos or bodies that are sort of self-sufficient, independent from one another. So by the recognition of this wholeness of our creation or oneness, that's how we know our creator. Because we are created in that likeness of wholeness. So exclusion and separation are synonymous. Yes. So, and this is tied to specialness, because remember that if I want a special relationship, okay, I'm going to include that person and exclude others. Or, I'm going to, let's see, form some kind of of a, um, a belief and identity of myself as different, um, apart from others. So that's exclusion, which is synonymous for separation. Okay. And also it's dissociation. So when I'm talking about other people, it's exclusion, but when I'm talking about my own, my own split mind, I'm talking about dissociation. So I can dissociate as an ego mind from my body, for example. Okay. Um, and I can even split, you could say, my own mind into maybe the good self and then the bad self, the public self or the private self. And if those parts become very distinct, then others can begin to notice that split. It's almost as if we had different personalities. You see what I'm saying? One environment would bring up one personality, and then a different environment would bring up the other personality, kind of thing. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, okay, so let's see. So we have said before that the separation was and is dissociation, and that once it occurs, projection becomes its main defense, or the device that keeps it going. Okay, so the thing about dissociation is that it compartmentalizes, kind of like memory almost. So that's why, people talk about schizophrenia and different personalities that are not aware of one another. So one is doing this, and then the other one comes in and doesn't know what the other one has done. Right? So it's a way, for example, to forget, to dissociate from what I find really shameful, that I cannot accept about myself. So I can give an example. So for example, maybe someone who is very devout, religious, but maybe is hiding some kind of addiction, maybe to pornography or whatever, to sex, whatever, something that's very shameful, that would be very shameful to the self, that is, very religious and follows all the church doctrine and all of that. As a matter of fact, it brings up this documentary we just saw, and it was on, let me see if I can remember the name of it. Oh, I can't remember the name of it, but it's based on a story of a doctor who did artificial insemination to help couples have children. And it turned out that he was lying to them about the donors, and he was using his own sperm. I know. Yes. So then, one of the kids kind of started, I don't remember how it all started, but the kids figured it out once they started getting DNA testing, and they started to get all these close relationships, like siblings, like, what's going on here? Yeah. So So up to the date of the movie, there were like 93 siblings from that one doctor. know. I know. So it was very interesting to watch that because you could really see how dissociated he was. Okay, because he did not want to take responsibility for what he did, and the the impact that that lie had on the kids, and especially on the ones who actually had a father that had the sperm that thought was their actual father's sperm. Okay, so so anyway, it was really interesting to watch because of the dissociation that occurs when there's a particular aspect of us that we reject. And a lot of times it's because we perceive ourselves as guilty and we reject that part and we don't want to see that part. And so there's this it's almost like this other self. It's almost like a double life thing kind of going on. Yeah. So let's see. And so the projection, and you could see a lot of projection there because he was justifying what he did all the way to the end, you know. So the projection is a way to not take responsibility for what we do and the effects of our decisions, which is a way to not accept the power of our mind. So it's a way to deny. Let me see if I can give you another example. Okay. So smoking, okay, most people recognize that is not healthy. Okay, but people continue to smoke. Okay, and my son picked it up, and he has noticed that, you know, when he smokes a lot, he gets hemorrhoids. So there seems to be some kind of association, the inflammation, you know, the toxicity, whatever. Okay. Okay. And of course, it's not so much the smoking, but it's the intention of why he's doing it. Okay, that we really need to look at. But from his point of view, he is trying to, you could say, cheat human nature, because he's trying to say, well, you know, I can smoke, and then my mom can just help me and we'll clear the effects. So I won't have to experience the effects, right? That most people would. Okay. But in the meantime, there's this gap of suffering. Okay. So we work and we tap on the hemorrhoids, and it releases and it clears, but then it comes up again because he keeps doing it. He keeps smoking and he keeps, okay. And so I'm saying, well, look, if you see that there's a connection there, then they go together. Okay, and if you stop one, then you'll take care of the other one. Okay, but he doesn't want to. He wants to dissociate the cause from the effect. That's what he's trying to do. Okay, and that's what dissociation is. Okay, we're trying to dissociate the power of our mind, you know, because we enjoy doing something, but we don't like the fact that the effects are looked down upon and have negative impacts, you know, on us or others. So we want to dissociate the cause from the effect, which is what we do with the idea of separation. We want to say, God is the cause and I am the effect, but we're separate. Okay. And therefore, I can do whatever the heck I want. And, God has no say in it. Okay. And yet, there's a part of us that knows that that's not true because we're afraid of God, even though God's separate. So we're afraid of death. We're afraid that, there's punishment after life, or we're afraid of karma, So all those fears suggest that cause and effect are not separate. You see, why would we be afraid if they were really separate? Okay. So, so the projection is a way to continue the belief in separation when there is no separation. It's a denial. Okay, because we, because of what we want to believe and not accept that we are all equal, that we are all the same, that we are all one creation. That was kind of a long thing, but there's a lot to that paragraph. Okay, do you have questions, Connie? Yeah. Oh, your mic's still off. Let's see.
There. So then is projection then always due to guilt? Or, why is there that automatic need to just project? Because it's uncomfortable and it just doesn't feel, we just know it's not the truth. And so we want to get it out.
Yeah, because we don't accept it, because we want to see ourselves differently. Okay, so we don't want to look at the error mostly because we think that the error is sinful, and it's not sinful. Okay, so if we recognized that the errors are completely forgivable, okay, if we had learned that early on, we would not be disowning anything or rejecting anything about ourselves, because we would know that deep down, everyone is completely loving as a true self, and that all the mistakes we make in this quote unquote lifetime, okay, do not change that essential nature. And then we would be completely forgiving with everyone and ourselves. Okay. But because we believe that sin, that doing things that are bad makes us bad, and that means that we have to suffer punishment, we become afraid. And once we become afraid, we project because we want to save ourselves from being punished. So we're going to say, oh no, I didn't do it. My brother did it. Okay. He started the fight. I didn't start the fight. Yes, I hit him back and I knocked his tooth out, but he started it. Okay. So it's not my fault. Okay. So we will do a lot of very desperate things to try to escape condemnation.
So let me give just a quick example, and I'm not sure what it is actually. Okay, so when I was young, I found my father who had taken his life. But so at that moment, I completely, I would say, dissociated. and push that away. Just, it's gone. That didn't happen. So it's not that I was feeling guilty. I think there was fear, but what actually, I'm trying to understand what actually my part was in that.
Okay, well, you have to ask yourself, what you kind of have to look at it third person and say, well, if this had happened to a friend of mine, what would I have imagined that she would be feeling in that situation?
Well, the very bottom line, I guess, would be sad.
Yes,
Fear, sad. I
yes,
mean,
yes, because you would be feeling what? Like maybe he didn't love you because he left you.
uh-huh.
Or maybe there's something about abandonment. Okay, because this was something that he chose to do.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm,
I mean, there's such a thing as a father who just packs his bags and leaves. But
mhm.
to a lot of people, death is the same thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and especially if it's suicide, because then it it says that they consciously chose it, and it wasn't just an illness that they tried to battle and didn't win.
So I maybe felt unloved in that moment and didn't want
Yes,
to feel that, and so pushed it away.
yes,
Hmm.
yeah,
Let's see. Hmm.
yeah. So the dissociation, maybe you felt rejected. I mean, it was I don't know, betrayal. I mean, it could have been. I mean, when you think about someone else in the same situation that all of your family was in, okay, how would you have judged that situation, the father?
Uh, as as just wanting to leave the family.
Yes, wanting to leave the
Yeah.
family. And
Yeah.
why does someone want to leave the family?
Well, they're unhappy with themselves, right? They think killing themselves will end their suffering, right?
Well, it's not about right. It's about how you're looking at it.
Oh,
Okay. It's not
well,
about, there's no,
yeah, to end their own personal whatever suffering, I would
okay.
say.
All right. So, and is that now most traditions look at suicide um, as a sin.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And you don't
So,
about it. It's like, ooh, yeah, we didn't talk about it. Yeah.
okay, well, there you go. So you didn't
Mm,
talk about it because it's sinful, it's shameful, it's embarrassing, it's
yeah.
confusing.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
it's just,
bad.
it's
It's bad.
bad. It's too much to deal with.
Right. So then I don't understand where the projection would be if it's dissociation and pushing it all in or whatever. What is the projection?
Well, the projection then would be that everything that you repress there, which would be
Mhm.
the sin, the
Mm,
shame, the embarrassment, all of that. Okay.
okay.
Uh, that would then get projected and you would see it in someone else, like someone else doing bad things that
Mm,
they shouldn't be doing. You would be
mm.
projecting it as perceiving sinful things.
Perceiving others doing harmful, wrong things.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
that, yeah, that makes sense. Or
yes.
perceiving others as being unloving or, yeah,
Mhm.
that's a big topic
It
to
is.
unwind. And thank you. Yeah, yeah, that's a lot. Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because once we judge it that way, that memory, we're going to hold it that way. And in order
Yeah.
to keep it with that interpretation, we're going to have to see the same thing outside to support that point of view.
Hmm. Hmm. Mhm. Boy, that could be seen in many different ways, split off into a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm,
wow.
mm-hmm.
Okay, too
Yeah.
much to, but yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I was wondering how that would be guilt. Yeah, and so that's helpful.
Well,
Yeah,
the minute that the idea of sin comes into play, there's
yeah,
guilt. Yeah.
and you want to just see it out there.
Yes.
Well, that's not here.
Yes. Because most of us, you know, want to portray a public image of let's see, I don't know, the all-American happy family.
Right. Mm.
Leave it to Beaver kind of
Mm.
thing. And so I think that there's I don't know, maybe in the 50s and the 60s, there was a lot more pressure
Right.
um, for that because I think that it comes down to the idea of suffering, of being unhappy. Um, that somehow to have all this material wealth and yet not be happy, not be fulfilled, not have peace, in some way points to some kind of failure for the
Yeah.
ego, and
Yeah.
that's very humiliating to look at.
Mm. Huh.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I mean, if we really, really looked at that, we would see that we're not we're not going to find happiness. We're not going to find true happiness following the ego. And that would be the end of the ego.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to read number 2?
Yeah. What you project, you disown, and therefore do not believe is yours. You are excluding yourself by the very judgment that you are different from the one on whom you project. Since you have also judged against what you project, you continue to attack it because you continue to keep it separated. By doing this unconsciously, you try to keep the fact that you attacked yourself out of awareness and thus imagine that you have made yourself safe. Okay, I'll let you do this.
Okay. Okay. So what you project, you disown. Okay. So let me see. So for example, and you do not believe is yours. So for example, maybe I have beliefs around friendship, and I think that I have, a belief that friends should be loyal, completely loyal, right? Okay. And that they should reciprocate. Okay. So, and so I do my best to always do that with my friends. And, okay. But if my friend doesn't do that, okay, I'm going to believe that I'm going to be upset about it because that's not what a friend does. Okay. And to not be a friend means that you are separate from me. Okay. Because you're not a good person. Okay. You're not to be trusted. You're not a good person. Okay. All right. So I'm going to believe that I'm not like that. I'm going to believe that I'm always loyal and, reciprocating with my friends. Okay. Uh, and so I'm going to have experiences where I have friends that are not like that, precisely because I have projected what I don't want to see in myself onto you. Okay. Because that's really what I did when I was younger. I did that to my friends. Okay. But in order to not see that, because I never took responsibility for that, okay, I repressed it. Now I'm projecting it and I see it in you. And I'm saying, you're not a very good friend. I don't think I can trust you anymore or something like that. Okay. And so I'm going to believe that that I'm not like that, but you're like that. Okay. So that's line number one. So number two, you're excluding yourself by the very judgment that you are different from the one on whom you project. Yeah. So I'm going to say, you know what? I'm a better friend than you are. Okay. So I'm different because I'm better. I don't, you're supposed to match what I do. So, if I show up for your birthday with a cake and do all this, then I'm going to expect the same thing from you. And if you don't do it, okay, you're not matching. So you're not as good a friend. So okay, so that's line two. So three, since you have also judged against what you project, you continue to attack it because you continue to keep it separated. Okay, so now anytime that I see anybody on TV or anywhere that's not reciprocating, I'm going to judge them. Oh, they're bad friends. You shouldn't hang around with them. I wouldn't put up with that. You need to find better friends. So I would be giving advice to everybody, and telling them, oh, yes, they have to reciprocate, So because I have judged against that, I'm going to continue to attack it. So I'm going to be I'm going to be a proponent of, rules for being a good friend, I'm going to be putting it on Facebook. I'm going to be doing all of that stuff because that's how I continue to keep it separated. And that's how I continue to see myself as better than those who don't follow those rules. Okay. So by doing this unconsciously, you try to keep the fact that you attacked yourself out of awareness and thus imagine that you have made yourself safe. Okay. So by doing this unconsciously, okay, what I have done is I have tried to keep the fact that I am guilty of the same thing in the past, but I have hidden that unconsciously out of my awareness because I'm ashamed of it and I never owned up to it. Okay. And so by hiding it, I am imagining that I have made myself safe from my own criticisms and judgments of you. Okay.
That is so crazy.
Yes, well, that's projection. Projection is a way we think of getting rid of unconscious guilt, which doesn't get rid of it. Okay. It just gives an appearance of believing that that what's in my unconscious is not really there.
Well, the whole thing about making us feel safe,
Well, it makes us feel safe because we think that as long as publicly I can attack you for being a bad friend, then that means that I'm a good friend by default. And so I am safe from others attacking me or from myself attacking myself for not being a good friend. So I'm safe from my own attack. That you attacked yourself out of awareness. Because when I attack you, I'm actually attacking myself out of awareness because I've done the same thing. And I wouldn't be attacking you if I hadn't done it myself, because I would not be seeing it as a bad thing. I would not have repressed it if I hadn't thought it was a bad thing to begin with. And then I wouldn't have projected it because there would be nothing there to project. Yeah. So
Good example. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Number 3.
Mm.
Yet projection will always hurt you. It reinforces your belief in your own split mind, and its only purpose is to keep the separation going.
Mm.
It is solely a device of the ego to make you feel different from your brothers and separated from them. The ego justifies this on the ground that it makes you seem, quote unquote, better than they are, thus obscuring your equality with them still further. Projection and attack are inevitably related because projection is always a means of justifying attack. Anger without projection is impossible. The ego uses projection only to destroy your perception of both yourself and your brothers. The process begins by excluding something that exists in you, but which you do not want, and leads directly to excluding you from your brothers. Okay, so the reason why projection will always hurt you is that the blaming or the judging, oh, you're a bad friend, you're whatever. It will always hurt you because judgment is a double-edged sword. So anything that I judge against you, I will have to judge against myself if I do the same thing. And unconsciously, I have already done the same thing, or I wouldn't be trying to project. But I have a split mind. So I dumped all that stuff in my unconscious mind so I wouldn't see it. So consciously, I feel completely justified, in blaming you and being angry at you because, hey, you forgot my birthday, after all those things I did for yours. So it reinforces the belief in your own split mind, and its only purpose is to keep the separation going. So it's a way to not recognize that I am holding the same, that everything that I see outside is just a reflection of what's in my mind. Okay, so I'm denying the split mind as a split mind. And that's how the separation keeps going.
Mhm.
And so 3, it is solely a device of the ego to make you feel different from your brothers and separated from them. Okay. And so that's what projection does. That's why it's separation. And so, and it's dissociation of our mind, conscious from unconscious. And it's, public, private. So there's just different ways to separate our mind. And it obscures equality, because when we see ourselves as different, then we tend to believe that God has preferences, and that some people are, more appealing or more pleasing than others, more productive, more, let's see, less sinful, so that there's always this idea of God as a judge that will separate the good, the bad, the productive, the unproductive, the useless, the useful, you know, worthy of punishment, unworthy of punishment, worthy of love, unworthy of love. So there's all this separation that we want to believe is true, and try to believe that God would see it that way too, when God is wholeness and cannot see separation. So we try to justify the separation because we feel guilty, and we don't want to look at how we are participating in that separation. So let's see. Number 5, projection and attack are inevitably related because projection is always a means of justifying attack. Yes, so yeah, and remember that the Course says that anger is never justified. Okay, that doesn't mean that we don't get angry. Okay, what it means is that attack is never justified. And the reason why attack is never justified is because we are never in a place to judge because we're all the same. We're all in the same boat. And
That's tricky. Yeah, that is tricky to not attack when you feel someone out there has done something they shouldn't have.
yes, but that's a projection, right? So attack itself becomes sinful, okay, bad, and so we repress it. Oh no, I never attack. Oh no, I don't judge. Okay, and then 3 sentences later, there you are judging, you know. And so, so then everybody is attacking me, is judging me, okay, but I don't do it. Okay. So it's all a projection. So I see it outside of me because I don't want to recognize that I do it. And that's the split mind. And it's very interesting because a lot of these reality shows you can see that very clearly in the people that play the parts. There's another show that my daughter was watching where you could see that projection, and it was an example just of a gossip, you know, and he was saying, oh no. So the one woman was asking him, I see, and so in your family everything is perfect, there's never anything, you know, that is going wrong or anything, because he was gossiping about someone else in their family, and he's like, oh no, they're doing all fine, and da 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 da. And then 3 sentences later he's like, well, you know, they've gone through a bankruptcy and all this and all that, but you know, they're he's like, I just want to put all that past behind me. I don't want to go into that, you know, but you could really see how he was judging and believing that he wasn't judging. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because remember that quote unquote justified attack, we don't call attack, we call defense.
Right.
We give it a different word for that purpose. Okay, because we want to say, oh no no no, it's justified, so somehow that doesn't make it attack. Well, it's still attack.
Right.
Yeah, so anger without projection is impossible, you see. So we're going to be perceiving the other person as separate from us when we are angry at them. Okay. And because we believe that they are separate from us and they are the cause of our anger, okay, we have just reversed cause and effect, which is level confusion.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
because we have disempowered our mind, which is the
Mhm.
only causal level
Mhm.
for how we feel. No, we say, oh no, what you did made me angry.
Mhm.
Well, okay, so now you are a victim of what other people do, you see, because you are not responsible for your own anger. Well, how can that be? Then how are you ever going to have inner peace?
Mhm.
You can't have inner peace if everything else around you is the cause of your conflict, feeling conflict. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the ego uses projection only to destroy your perception of both yourself and your brothers. Yes, so he uses projection to bring in separation so that we don't see the oneness of our mind and that nothing can happen without our consent. So let's see. And this process begins by excluding something that exists in you, but which you do not want. Yeah. And leads directly to excluding you from your brothers. Because once we decide, once we've decided we don't want something, it's because we've judged it, negatively in some way, bad. And now, once we've judged that, and it's going to be projected, and we're going to see it in others, and we're going to judge others for that, and that's going to be an attack, and that's going to be exclusion. Exclusion. We're going to see separation between our brothers and ourselves. Okay. Okay.
I have a quick example. This morning, I said to my husband, oh, I have all of these doctor appointments coming up. And he said, well, what would the course say about that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm judging them all as a big burden rather than just being neutral about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's kind of like what we're talking about here.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right. So, so we forget that the world is completely neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so everything that we see on it is a projection. So if we're having a reaction, any kind of reaction, it's going to be projection.
It's a judgment. Yeah, it's all judgment. Yeah.
It's all a judgment.
Mm-hmm. Interpretation. How am I interpreting that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was, yeah.
Okay.
The mind, the wrong mind.
The wrong mind, exactly. So, so let's see, paragraph 4, Connie, go ahead and read
We have learned, however, that there is an alternative to projection. Hooray, hooray. Every ability of the ego has a better use because its abilities are directed by the mind, which has a better voice. The Holy Spirit extends and the ego projects. As their goals are opposed, so is the result. So I think that's a little confusing to me. Sentence 2, every ability of the ego has a better use because its abilities are direct. It seems to me, though, that the ego has a different mind than what it's saying here because its abilities are directed by the mind.
So everything that the ego makes can be used by the Holy Spirit for a different purpose. So the ego projects in order to separate. Okay. And the Holy Spirit can use that ability to extend rather than to project, because the goals are opposed. So the Holy Spirit joins by extending, and the ego separates by projecting. And so the Holy Spirit extends, for example, by forgiving. So in forgiving, we are extending love and compassion, and that's joining. And those are the different goals that are opposed, and therefore so are the results. So what we will experience when we extend forgiveness is we will experience love, because that is what we are giving, and giving is receiving. And what the ego is projecting is separation, and therefore that will be the experience that we have. It will be one of separation and conflict and fear. So that's the alternative. So number 5, the Holy Spirit begins by perceiving you as perfect. Knowing this perfection is shared, he recognizes it in others, thus strengthening it in both. Instead of anger, this arouses love for both because it establishes inclusion. Perceiving equality, the Holy Spirit perceives equal needs. This invites atonement automatically, because atonement is the one need in this world that is universal. To perceive yourself this way is the only way in which you can find happiness in the world. That is because it is the acknowledgement that you are not in this world, for the world is unhappy. Okay, so we begin with different foundations. The Holy Spirit, remember there's 2 thought systems. Holy Spirit thought system begins with the foundation that we are as God created us, whole and perfect. Okay, and therefore everyone in that creation is whole and perfect. So knowing this perfection, accepting that as the truth for ourselves, is to recognize it, be able to recognize it in others. Okay. If we don't recognize our true essential nature to be whole, perfect, and loving, okay, we're not going to be able to recognize it in others, because it's one creation. But if we recognize it in others, then we're strengthening it in both, because we're the same. So instead of anger, this arouses love for both because it establishes inclusion. So when there's an error, instead of anger, okay, we're going to recognize that we're both in the same boat. So there's no separation, and there's a lesson there in the error, because the error is the effect of not having chosen the Holy Spirit. Okay, so once the error shows up, all we can do is forgive it and return to the right mind to receive Holy Spirit guidance. Because if we don't do that, then we stay stuck in false perception, in the belief in separation. We support that belief instead of undoing it when we don't forgive it, or when we stay in anger. So for perceiving equality, the Holy Spirit perceives equal needs, and this invites atonement automatically, because atonement says that the separation never happened. And so And so to not recognize that the separation never happened is a need. So if someone perceives me as separate from them, or if I perceive them as separate from myself, we both have that same need because we have forgotten the truth. And that's why we're all in the same boat, because that's why we're all here. We think we're all here. So to perceive yourself this way is the only way in which you can find happiness in the world, because otherwise, to not recognize the truth is to believe that we are separate. And to believe that we are separate means that my happiness is something that I have to, let's see, it means that my happiness is incomplete, because I'm going to see myself as incomplete. I'm going to see myself as lacking. I'm going to see myself as not enough. Okay, that split mind is not going to see itself as whole. And it's only when the mind recognizes it is whole that it recognizes it lacks nothing, has everything, and is everything, and is happy. Otherwise, we're always going to be perceiving differences and inequality and, oh, well, they're better off than I am, or how come, they were treated better than me, or there's always going to be a perception of inequality, which is to be unhappy, to think that there's injustice in the world, to think that it's unfair, to think that I'm a victim. So all of that is inequality. And I can't be happy because I'm going to be judging that and believing that someone has done me wrong. So this is because it is the acknowledgement that you are not in this world, for the world is unhappy. Yeah. So a world of separation is unhappy. It cannot be happy because it cannot see wholeness. And so the whole mind, which is the truth of what we are, cannot be in the world. You see? Yeah, that happy mind is beyond space and time. So that is our true self. Our true self is not the self that believes itself to be in time and space as a separate ego body. Okay. Okay, number 6, when you're ready, Connie. Let's see.
Okay. How else can you find joy in a joyless place except by realizing that you are not there? You cannot be anywhere God did not put you, and God created you as part of Him. That is both where you are and what you are. It is completely unalterable. It is total inclusion. You cannot change it now or ever. It is forever true. It is not a belief, but a fact. Anything that God created is as true as He is. Its truth lies only in its perfect inclusion in Him, who alone is perfect. To deny this is to deny yourself and Him, since it is impossible to accept one without the other.
Okay, so it's basically saying we are not a body, we are not an ego, we are an eternal spirit that is still whole and one with God in eternity. And we are having a physical experience, we are having a dream of being a separate ego self with a body in a world, that appears to, let's see, make the idea of separation what is the norm and what is true. And we believe it. Okay, but none of it is true, because we are still as God created us, whole and perfect. And we can come to recognize that now, and still and bring that recognition, that light of truth into the world that believes otherwise. And we call that waking up from the dream. So let's see. So, and that's why we study A Course in Miracles, right? Because we would rather be happy, even if that means we're wrong about everything. So, okay, number 7. The perfect equality of the Holy Spirit's perception is the reflection of the perfect equality of God's knowing. The ego's perception has no counterpart in God, but the Holy Spirit remains the bridge between perception and knowledge. By enabling you to use perception in a way that reflects knowledge, you will ultimately remember it. The ego would prefer to believe that this memory is impossible, yet it is your perception the Holy Spirit guides. Your perception will end where it began. Everything meets in God because everything was created by Him and in Him. Okay, so the Holy Spirit, so perfect equality, the Holy Spirit is the reflection of the perfect equality of God's knowing. Okay, so the world is a world of perception, and perception is either right if it's in alignment with God's knowing, and that's what we call the thoughts of God. That's the Holy Spirit's guidance. Okay. But the ego's perception is false perception. And it's not in alignment. It's not a reflection of God's knowing. So it's not anything, because only knowing is reality. And that's why we call the ego thought system illusion. Okay, because it's not reflecting anything. There's nothing outside of God. God is wholeness. Okay, so the Holy Spirit remains the bridge between perception and knowledge. So perception still involves, the body's senses, but knowledge is not, has nothing to do with the body, time and space. So perception is still part of time and space. Knowledge isn't. Knowledge is beyond time and space. And so the Holy Spirit is that bridge between the world of time and space and absolute truth, which is knowledge, which is God, spiritual knowledge. So by enabling you to use perception in a way that reflects knowledge, you will ultimately remember it. So when we practice forgiveness, we are, which is an act of love, we are reflecting, we're using perception in a way that reflects knowledge, which is only loving. And because it's a true reflection, in the experience that we have of forgiving, we begin to remember that that is the truth, that what we forgive is what my brother never did, because it's illusion. It never happened. Okay. So the ego would prefer to believe that this memory is impossible. So the present memory, the memory of love, is what the ego would prefer to believe that it is impossible. Yes, it is your perception the Holy Spirit guides. And so this is what the Holy Spirit is guiding us to, is to remember the presence of love, which is what God is, which is what we are, which is our true essential nature. And so number 5, your perception will end where it began. Yeah, everything meets in God, because that is the only reality, the only truth. Everything else is illusion. And everything everything else is illusion. So the wording makes it confusing, because when I say everything else, it means as if there is something else. Okay, but there's nothing else. It's illusion. Okay, so only what was created by God exists and has reality and is everything. Okay. A world that does not reflect wholeness and our true loving essential divine nature, okay, is going to be an illusion. That's not there. Okay, but it's a past memory of something that we made up and believed to be true. And because we're still holding on to that belief, we see it, but it's an imaginary thing. Just like when we project, we are imagining things that are not true. We make all these assumptions and they're all wrong, but we don't investigate them. And once we start investigating, then we see, okay, I'm wrong. Yes, I'm wrong. Okay, I'm wrong, but hey, I'm happy. Okay, number 8. I think you're still muted, Connie. Okay, there you go.
Something keeps happening where it shows up the host has you muted.
Yeah,
So,
no.
yeah, anyway.
Okay.
Okay, number 8. Okay. Let's see. God created his sons by extending his thought and retaining the extensions of his thought in his mind. All his thoughts are thus perfectly united within themselves and with each other. The Holy Spirit enables you to perceive this wholeness now. God created you to create. You cannot extend his kingdom until you know of its wholeness.
Yeah, so extension is creation, and only in heaven do we create. So on earth, the earth plane is for healing, the healing of the mind, so that it can remember its wholeness and release the split mind. And then it can extend his kingdom, God's kingdom. That's why number 5 says you cannot extend his kingdom until you know of its wholeness. There's no separation. So to extend God's kingdom is to accept the atonement, which says that the separation never happened. And therefore, to recognize the oneness of our mind and our true essential nature as eternal spirit. So, so we are an extension of his thought, of God's thought. And we are still in God's mind, retaining the extensions of his thought in his mind. So we are still in God, beyond time and space. And thus all of his thoughts are perfectly united within themselves and with each other. So the perception of separation is an illusion that is made in a world of time and space by the belief in separation. So without that belief, the mind would be whole and would be creating with God. Otherwise, we're miscreating, which is projecting, and therefore supporting the belief in separate, reinforcing the belief in separation. Number 9, thoughts begin in the mind of the thinker from which they reach outward. This is as true of God's thinking as it is of yours. Because your mind is split, you can perceive as well as think. Yet perception cannot escape the basic laws of mind. You perceive from your mind and project your perceptions outward. Although perception of any kind is unreal, you made it and the Holy Spirit can therefore use it well. He can inspire perception and lead it towards God. This convergence seems to be far in the future only because your mind is not in perfect alignment with the idea and therefore does not want it now. Okay, so yes, all thoughts begin in the mind of the thinker from which they reach outward. Okay, so it's not like, so that what it's saying is that the mind is the causal level. That's where thoughts originate, is in the mind. They don't just like, you know, show up in the mind from somewhere else. That's not mind. So this is true of God's thinking as it is of yours. Okay. However, okay, because your mind is split, you can perceive as well as think. All right. So thinking, notice how in line 2, God's thinking, the thinking is capitalized. Okay. And then it says there's God's thinking and then there's yours. Okay. So our thinking with a little t is not really thinking. Okay. Because your mind is split, you can perceive as well as think. So perception, we made up perception. You could almost say perception is like imagination. Okay. Yet perception cannot escape the basic laws of mind. You perceive from your mind and project your perceptions outward. Yes. So because what we do is we make thoughts into images in order to be able to see them as three-dimensional objects. So although perception of any kind is unreal, okay, so all perception is unreal. So even right perception, even true perception, right mind, okay, is still unreal. That's why the Course calls it the happy dream, but it's still a dream. So because you made it as the belief in a separate self, okay, but the Holy Spirit can still use it. So everything that our ego makes, the Holy Spirit can still use to undo it. So Holy Spirit can inspire perception and lead it towards God. So this convergence seems to be far in the future only because your mind is not in perfect alignment with the idea. Okay. So, so to not be in perfect alignment with the Holy Spirit means that we don't want it now. What it means is that we are stalling in time. Okay, we're choosing to wait in time. And that's the decision that our mind makes. We cannot choose the curriculum, but we can choose how long it takes us to complete it. Okay. And so as long as we are not in perfect alignment with the Holy Spirit, it's just going to take us longer, that's all, to learn the lessons. And that's fine. It just means we don't want it now. So let's see. Okay, number 10. Yeah, Connie.
I need to stop for today. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, it is time. Okay, so we're going to pick up on paragraph 10.
Yeah, 10.
Okay, that's a good place to stop.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look forward to, the alternative to forgiveness.
Yes.
Always forgiveness, I would imagine.
Yes, it is.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
The assignment.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, quit stalling.
Quit stalling. That's the practice, right? The more we practice it, the quicker it, the miracle, right? So the forgiveness is the change in mind. The decision to forgive is the change in mind from believing, from projection, you see, to the extension of love. It's an act of love. So therefore, it's in alignment with the Holy Spirit inspired teachings, which saves time.
Yes.
As a miracle.
It's an act of love, forgiveness. Yes. These simple little phrases are so huge. So important. So important.
Yeah, that's right.